Morning, everybody. I'm super excited to have Ted Finch, CEO of Chanimal and Chanimal University, with me today. Ted, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
I have heard so much about you. I've followed you online for years. So it's an honor to have you on our podcast and look forward to having a great conversation.
Absolutely.
So, Ted, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself? You have an incredible history. You have done so much for the partner ecosystem area in education, in consulting, and other areas. But let you introduce yourself to our audience and we'll take it from there.
Okay. Well, I've been doing this. Chanimal's been around for 30 years, but my background is I started actually in the animation industry, and then I formed Redstrom Entertainment with Tom Clancy, and then I was the vice president, General Electric, senior vice president, Motorola, formed the world's largest channel company. We grew it from 13 of us to 4,000 field reps, giving 20 demos a week. That's 80,000 demos a week. So we built all that channel stuff there. And then later I went on to write the marketing plan for Netscape and just all kinds of stuff within the industry.
So, kind of at the moment, can you tell me a little bit about what Chanimal is all about and what Chanimal University is all about?
Well, Chanimal was originally created as a bulletin board system just to share information between technology companies. Because I used to sell into all these different vendors, I had a database with thousands of different vendors in it. So I first formed a bulletin board system where people could say, okay, how much did you pay for that rate on PC Magazine? Or give me a sample of one of the templates that you used for one of your campaigns that worked. And then it just sort of grew from there. Now Chanimal's got over 1,000 pages of content. It's probably the number one resource in the world for all high-tech marketing. And then Chanimal University really came about once COVID kicked in, and I couldn't just go out and train 300 people at a time after the trade shows. I had to do it all online. And so then I fired up Chanimal University, and that's sort of how that began.
So, when did you start Chanimal?
Well, 30 years ago, this year is when I started it. And then it just sort of branched from there. But again, it's sort of who's who in the entire world is in my database of people who have gone to the Chanimal website. I mean, I still go to trade shows, like one team over there at Google. I walked by and one of the guys said, "Hey, it's Chanimal." They all ran over and three of them jumped down on their knees and said, "I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy." And I'm like, "You guys are funny." They said, "Everything we learned about channels, we learned from Chanimal." So I was like, "Yeah, well, that's cool."
So, before we get into Chanimal and then the incredible education that you and your team provide, talk to me a little bit about over the last 30 years. How do you think the channel has evolved?
Well, I almost see that it's coming back to where it was before. When the channel first started, they just had, VARs and moms and pops and, a couple little places. Then I remember when one of our field reps ran in and said, "I went to a store and they have shopping carts." It was CompUSA. And then we started seeing the software showing up in Software Etc. And then Egghead kicked in and, all these software companies. So that was exciting times as we saw it grow and grow and grow, both the retail side and the VARs. Then we started seeing some integration type pieces with a lot of the networking that was kicking in. And so over the years, that continued to grow. And then, Amazon came out, COVID came out, retail started to die. It's almost like we're right back to where I was originally, but we've got this break in between where a lot of the people will not ever get the experience that we learned from retail. There were some things that we could get in retail where we had fast turnovers. So we can learn some things that, if you've got a sales cycle of 6 months, you're not going to learn that very quickly. But we can learn a lot of the things there. So all that information still gets carried over, even if retail is not around very much.
The discussion about Egghead reminds me when they were coming about, they were the hottest thing around. Buy.com was another one where these multi shrink wrap software, people were selling. Then they went to DVD, then they went to streaming. And now the whole thing collapsed into marketplace. So do you see from an aggregation point perspective what they were trying to do then versus what's happening with AWS or the hyperscalers? Are there similarities or are they completely different?
The marketplace is really, because I also did a lot of work with SaaSmax when they were a marketplace. Now they're Partner Optimizer. But a lot of the marketplace were just aggregators for especially the SaaS applications, which essentially, when you look at it, is sort of like what retail was. Like Egghead Software was an aggregator. You just had a physical box. Now, I will mention that over the years, I have not sold any of my services to do valuation for packaging design like I used to back then, because people just don't, I'll still create packages for online stuff, but it's all virtual. It's just try to make it look like it's something solid instead of just bits and bytes.
So today, when you think about Chanimal, like what are the core components of it? what do you do? How is it structured? What is unique
Okay.
about it? I have so many questions. So let's just start first with, what is it?
Well, Chanimal again was originally just a free resource that I put out there. And then I would have a lot of companies because I'd gone through 5 acquisitions. I mean, I was, 5 acquisitions, 5 kids. Most people see the pattern. Then the wife would kick me back out and say, go do it again. And so each time I would build that up and then I would sort of consult with companies, just sort of help people for free. And so even the consulting started off for free. I just had too much information. I'd already retired from General Electric, retired as a senior vice president for Motorola after another acquisition, retired from Harcourt, just one retire, after the other. So I was just giving the information away for free. And then one time I called a person up I'd been working with for a couple of months, helping him out. And I called him up and apparently I interrupted him in the meeting and he got mad at me. And so I just sat there stunned afterwards. So apparently I realized what we obtained too cheaply, we esteemed too lightly. So I sent him a bill for $10,000. I said, okay, pay this bill and we'll talk again. 2 weeks later, I got a bill for that. He sent me a check and I was like, oh, be darn. Okay. So I wanted to be able to help all these companies sort of return back to all the stuff that everyone had given me through the channel, but I didn't want to charge a lot of money. Most consultants will charge $10,000 to $30,000 a month. So I figured, what's the minimum amount that they will show up for their meeting? Won't cost them very much, where I can get a lot of startups and stuff too to come on board. But they've got some skin in the game. So I charged $12.50 a month. Would just help them out. But the problem is I would get up to 18 companies at a time. So I was just swamped, just absolutely just jam packed with everybody coming in. And this is everybody, even existing companies like, let's say, SurveyMonkey, that just didn't have a channel, but they were well established. So I just kept raising the price up, using price as a barrier. So right now it's about $27.50, and I still run with usually anywhere between 6 to 18 companies simultaneously. So one of the things that I do is I do the consulting, and the consulting helps me from the training because I'm constantly back into the channel, seeing all the things that are doing in multiple market segments. I mean, in consulting, I work with retail all the way up to the highest enterprise, to grid computing, to, genome research software, to tons of security software that's out there. I'm just all over the place. And so each one of those channels have different nuances. And as I discover new things that are working, I take that and fold that into all the coursework, all the training material. So that's the part where a lot of the training, when I saw that was out there, it was a lot of people that looked like they were professors. You listen to it, and there's not very many tactics. It's sort of just concepts. And I was like, that's useless, because a lot of the channel people know the concepts. What they really want to know is which email copy works the best. How do you get them to even open up your email? What's the best time of the day to call in? I mean, they're looking for tactics. So these tactics will change according to enterprise, MSP. You call up Accenture and it's something completely different than if you call CDW. So this just sort of keeps my fingers wet, so I know what's sort of working currently. So Chanimal has the consulting that sort of just came about that way. And again, it's flourishing. I worked with over 700 companies. So it's really flourishing. And then the training sort of came about, I'll talk about that in a second. And then the third thing I have is sometimes I have some different systems, and I have lots of content that people can pick up, like all the templates and the processes and everything else.
Awesome. So looking at these different segments or verticals that you work with, do you see one moving faster than the other? Like, what's the number one?
Security.
Security.
Yeah, security just is all, for the last several years, it's been the hottest category.
What's the second category in your mind that's changing really, really fast?
Let's see. Well, most of it is security. CRM keeps coming up all the time. Then we have the regular ones, which is the project management stuff. And, every time someone calls me up, I said, look, there's 800 competitors. Give me 3 to 5 reasons why I would want to pick you up. What's so different about you that we need another, system like that? But again, if I were to look at that, I have to break it down by different industries to see sort of which ones come up the most frequently. But I just get bombarded with all kinds of stuff. From some AI stuff is hitting me now. Companies doing AI, trying to figure that out, which again, we all know that that's sort of like the next internet. Like when I launched Netscape and worked with Steve Case to launch American Online, all the internet stuff back then was crazy. And so AI is the same way right now.
So going back to maybe the top three segments that you kind of talked about, cybersecurity being one of them. What are the main differences you see across SMB, mid-market, enterprise? Are they all looking for the same things, or the go-to-markets are different when it comes to your methodology, how do they apply across those three segments into that specific vertical?
Well, like for example, with security, I mean, I have companies that have high-end enterprise security. And of course, their sales cycles are going to be longer. They've got a lot more referencing that happens. And I would probably say my fastest growth of all of that is the SMB security, because it seems like enterprise got covered several years back. And now a lot of the small businesses are running into the same security issues that the large, I mean, it doesn't really change any, but they look at that enterprise stuff that's $30,000 a year and they just choke. So I'm seeing a lot of progress with SMB channels, but we handle them a lot different. We go MSP by MSP, and sometimes we get the managed security service providers that go after that market, and they're segmented. There's some that are smaller, that have a screen of, 25 companies they work with. And then there's others where they've got hundreds. It was sort of like when I was with GE Security, where, our security systems were used at Fort Knox and with the Louvre. And, like IBM had a central facility where they had 800 offices and about 2,000 doors all up on these screens. It was all the way around the entire room. We're seeing that sometimes with security also.
So on the security side, you're seeing a migration down from enterprise through mid-market to SMB. Do you see the same trend in CRM and project management, the next two categories also?
Well, I think CRM has already gone through that. I was also the VP of marketing for Goldmine. So, if anyone's used Goldmine back then, it was the number one bestseller. We dominated the market, and then I'd say they sold too early before the real money kicked in. But CRM has, I mean, I get it. It always has that same type of market. It's got your individual salespeople that need something more of contact management. Then you've got the enterprise where you've got these teams. They just need to collaborate all their materials. And then we've got companies like Salesforce that are sort of very minor, I would say, CRMs, as I would say, but they're complete platforms where everybody builds on top of it. And then there's others, like Zoho, where it's just all combined. But that market, I don't even see that new anymore. That's really mature. I mean, I've been working CRM for 10 years.
What about in the program management or project management tool space?
Well, project management, it's oversaturated. I mean, that's why I said there's over 800 competitors. So it's just everybody seems to think that, it's easy to create. And so they just create something new. But I don't, I'm picky on the companies I pick up. And if they don't have good positioning that they can fix, some just don't know how to articulate their positioning. Others, they don't. It's just another Me Too product. So if I can't find a differentiator, neither can the reseller. So that product's going to be a hard push to get that in.
So that may be a great place to start to talk about your Chanimal University. So if someone, let's say, I'm launching another 801st tool in, project management, and I want to design the product for the channel, right? So even before, there's product market fit, but let's say if I want to think about product channel fit, if I'm going through the university, what are the things that you think I'll find in the university that you offer will educate me from that dimension?
Well, it's interesting because there is a whole section in there dealing with positioning. Because as a senior vice president at Motorola, I sat on the marketing board. I was over strategy, which is positioning. So the first thing on that is give me 3 to 5 reasons why you'd be an absolute fool not to buy that product. So I always start with a competitive matrix. And, about 30% of your partners won't even come on board unless there's a competitive matrix. They're tired of picking up the product and find out, I just bought the loser product. So we get that done, and then that tells us what we've got. It also tells us which market segment that we can go after, because if they don't have the enterprise features, they're obviously not going to go there. If they're somewhere in the middle and there's no differentiation, then we've got to treat it like water. We've got to differentiate by distribution or by the way that we package it, the way that we word it. But those are a lot harder in a crowded market like that. Most of the time, I weed those out from a consultant before they even come in. But at least within the course, you're going to hear a lot of information about positioning, about competitive, and it's going to show you tactically how to actually execute and get all that stuff done.
So what's next beyond positioning? Let's say I have great reviews on whether it's G2 Crowd or Forrester or some other, third party that validates that I really got a great product. What happens next?
Well, the first thing we do once we get positioning done is there are companies with good positioning, but they can't articulate it. The problem is a lot of the marketing teams don't have sales backgrounds. So they create informative arguments. They throw features out there. It's like someone says, why should I buy this? And, it's like they're looking for a Caesar salad and someone drops off ingredients. It's like, I don't need to know, that it's got olive oil and croutons and lettuce and everything else. I want it all put together for me. So what we use then is we use something called a persuasive format, which is attention, credibility, problem, solution, best solution, overcome objections, visualization, step to actuate. So we take that same information, we just put it in there. Here's the problems. Here's the alternatives that exist. Here's the solution, which is our product. And then here's 3 to 5 reasons why you'd be a fool not to consider our product. We overcome objections on that with FAQs. And then we have a close on that, a visualization step and a close. So usually, and this is also taught within the course. I mean, that's why most of the time people see this and they're like, I had no idea that my product had such bad positioning. You can usually tell this because like even like at Motorola, semiconductor sector, I mean, what was on the website was not what was on the product slick. And when you see the PowerPoint, it wasn't even close. And none of those were persuasive. They were all just sort of like jumbled feature dumps. So this persuasive format gets everything into a structure. One of my companies, for example, had a 24% close ratio. And after just restructuring the exact same product, it went up to 47%. Another one had 27%, it went up to 42%. So just by restructuring your information, making it into an argument instead of a feature dump, you're doing the work for the prospect that they're asking you. Convince me to buy this. I mean, they want to be convinced so they can stop searching and get back to work. So that's all covered within the course. There's a big section in there dealing with this because it's a big problem. Whenever I build the channels, and so I take this right here and build it into the course, partners look for 3 things. Number 1 is product positioning. You know, if I can't figure out why someone would be a fool not to buy a product, we don't even have to look at your partner program. I don't care how much margin you're going to throw at me. The second thing they want to look at is how do I make money, which is your margin and other things you have. Do you have deal registration? Do I have, and the third thing they look at is, do you love me? When I come on board, are you going to take care of me? Or are you going to treat me like a cat? And so a lot of that is your systems, your processes. Do you help them with the orientation? Do you model calls, coaching calls, all that stuff? So this is all built into the course itself. Again, it's just totally holistic from, you know, wherever you take your company, your product, wherever it's at, and you take it and go from there.
So let's go through those 3 steps, right? So if we think about positioning, let's say we go through your framework, I get a product position right. Then when it comes to margin, what's the right margin? If I'm selling in the mid-market, let's say 20, 30, 50K software packages, ACV wise, what's the right margin for a partner?
Well, it's interesting when you say that. Probably my top video, I have a lot of videos on YouTube. My top video is how to determine your reseller margin. And the first thing I always say is you can't do it in a vacuum. You know, most of your companies out there, they can get pricing from multiple different companies, and yet it's harder for you to get that pricing. So you pretend like you just go out there, you don't know it. So you usually gather this up as part of your positioning because pricing can be part of your positioning. You know, we're the price performance leader. Same thing that Salesforce has, but we're half the price. Okay, but it can't be your best positioning. I usually say on positioning, if that's all you've got is a lower price, you want it positioning strong enough that the competition can't make a command decision and say, okay, we're going to drop and match that price, because then you have no positioning. It should at least require 6 months for your competition to be able to match some of your strongest positioning on that. Okay, so on pricing, it's always use your comparative matrix. That tells you what's out there. So, you know, I just say, just get your top 5 vendors that you run into all the time and find out what their pricing is. You can always just, I have a whole section on there, how to get people's pricing, including calling their partners and asking them. So we get the competition pricing, and then you have to determine a couple things. For example, like who pays, you know, if it's a SaaS application, who pays who, how fast do you pay them, you know, how soon do you pay them? But at the same time, I also produce a quote by category. Because I've done so many of those comparisons already, I'm usually say, okay, if you're cybersecurity and this is what the common margins are. So just go out and find out if it's not that. If it's not, use these and you're going to be competitive.
And then when it comes to taking care of them, showing them love, like what are the main steps I need to think about?
Well, the first thing you do when you're trying to show partners love is responsive. So for example, I have a chart that shows every element of a channel partner program known to mankind on it. And I go through this in the course and sort of show them, here's all the stuff. Take a look at your partner program, put it in here and see where the holes are. But when it comes to the outside of the portal, trying to recruit them, with one of the companies, you know, I had a whole team that I was working with. We were trying to get a hold of just a single channel manager. We couldn't get their phone number. We called into the switchboard and they said, well, we're not allowed to give you that phone number because recruiters keep calling, trying to recruit our people. So we had a problem with that. And so with resellers, it's like, look, just put your picture on the outside of the portal, the recruiting part. Put a single contact, put a chat, and put an email. Okay, that shows a lot of love right up front They realized, hey, this company is easy to do business with. Second is I put a copy of my agreement right on the outside of the portal. I don't put the margins there, but I put it right there. This way it shows this transparency, shows you're easy to work with. Second is when it comes time to recruiting. When somebody fills out an application, not a lead form. I don't use lead forms for the website. If you've got all the contact information, you don't need a lead form. They can call you and they can email. They can chat. You're right there. But when they fill out that application, my rule is follow up with them within 2 minutes. When that application hits your desk, you stop everything and you immediately start to contact them because the average reseller takes 7 phone calls to catch on the phone. So what you want to do is you want to see that, that they're sitting at their desk. So go there, look and see if it matches your criteria. Usually the reseller application has enough detail, it'll tell you. And if it is, send them the approval email and call them up within 2 minutes. And that shows a lot of love. And then after that, the orientation, the way that we scheduled 1 meeting per month to make sure that we help them. We convert our hats from channel sales to channel marketing, and then help them to come up with 1 thing per month to do that will help to generate a sales for their company using your product. That shows a lot of love. The industry average, they always say the 80-20 rule. Sometimes I'll have like 200 people in a training session. I said, what's your ratio? How many of your partners are active? Someone says, I got 10,000 partners. I got 2,000 are active. So it's the old 80-20 rule. Well, it's actually worse than that. The ratio is actually 18% are active. And that means 82% are not active. My ratio when I was a channel manager physically doing this was 83% of my partners were active. And I had 17% that were not active. So what I do in the coursework is I show you how I did this. And a lot of that is showing the love, building an emotional bank account, the cadence that I use to connect with them, the way I don't overburden them with a big marketing plan, but it's just plan of action, 1 thing per month that you're going to do. And then you help them. You give them templates and samples and all that stuff. And that goes into your portal. That shows the love.
So let's go to the third step about like what you're describing, showing the love through a multi-step process, all the way from, responding to the inquiry and kind of working with them. So in the direct side, and Ted, I know I have a lot of experience on the direct side, like in a classic direct sales, let's say we have, a demo request at a discovery call, then a budgetary pricing, then demo, 1 or 2, 3 demos, then it goes through some sort of an agreement. Then it goes through, security, a whole bunch of other steps, right? 5, 6, 7-step cycle. If it's enterprise, mid-market, maybe shorter. When I'm looking at a partner engagement, like I want to recruit onboard partners, what are the logical stages in that life cycle? How do I set up my CRM so I can track the partner prospect coming in and putting them through stages so my inside sales or channel sales can also follow a structured process?
Whenever I first work with companies, and this is some of the templates that I provide, I have a follow-up process. And the follow-up process is, again, getting their contact information, getting their time zone. Just shocking how many people keep calling. And it's like, you do realize it's 6 o'clock in the morning over there, right? Okay. And then what we do is then we get them into the system. So we, if they don't automatically log in or a system where you can just click and approve them real quick, then you've got to get them into your existing system. And then I set up the first meeting. In the first meeting, I cover the portal, the content that I've produced for them. I cover my 5 major policies, your deal registration, your lead policies, your MDF policies. I cover those policies with them. And I do all of this in 7 minutes. So I cover all those policies. That's the stuff that should be in your portal. And then I talk to them about promotions. So that's something new, is the first 90 days, if you lose your partners, I lose 97% of my partners in the first 90 days. They just never engage. It's sort of like Top Gun. Maverick, engage. They don't. They just, I don't call it channel management. I call it channel neglect. Okay. So what they do is at that point, the first 90 days, that's when I'm all hands on deck. I run a 90-day promotion. It's the only promotion that I run that's for the owner, for the store itself. Because other promotions, I bypass them and I go straight, I manage their team directly. I just run spiffs, promotions, other kind of stuff with the salespeople. But that first one, I usually have like an extra 10% margin for any deal that you register in the first 90 days. That obviously doesn't apply to retail. I do something different there, but it certainly applies to most of the other, VAR type channels, MSPs, VAR, system integrators, doesn't matter. The first 90 days, I run those promotions. And then once I do that, I never leave a meeting without setting up the next meeting. Again, it's that rule, 7 phone calls to catch a person at their desk. So I don't want to be making phone calls. I just set it up. The first meeting after that is a marketing orientation meeting. And that's a 20-minute meeting. And in that meeting, and then the systems the systems automatically track this. As you do each one, you just put a check mark and it tracks it and carries you through this process. So then we've got the marketing meeting, and in that meeting, you don't get into the tactics. You just say, okay, what have you guys done? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? Here's the top 3 things that you should do. Always, number one, let's get the product on your website. One of the companies I worked with, they're 4 billion in size. They had 200 channel managers. 13% of their partners had the product, did not, or had the product on their website. That's it. Only 13%. I was like, you guys, that's preposterous. You're sending them leads and the people can't even find your product on their website. What's wrong with this picture? Okay, so get the product on the website, and not just the product. I create a optimized landing page that it's like, look, just take this landing page, put this on one of the pages of your website, and right now my record is 100% of the time when they someone searches the keywords you give them from that landing page, they will show up on the first page of Google, usually in the first 3 positions, and over 70% in the first position. So this way, it starts to generate leads for them automatically because they've now got a website. So when someone types it in locally, like let's say Austin, Texas, they type in CRM, their name pops up and they start getting their own leads. So I do that first. The second thing is an email campaign to their existing clients. Most pick this up because they have existing clients that are interested in this technology. Okay, so then we do an email campaign for that. And then the third thing is the email drives them to their website and drives them to a webinar. Those are the first 3 things that I do every single time whenever I'm working with a partner. And this is taught in the course and it explains why. A lot of companies make a big mistake by putting their training in there too early. Now, if you're Microsoft with with some of their C&E training and all that other kind of stuff, well, people have already got a product they know that there's demand for. But when you have a product that people don't know about yet, resellers are scared to spend too much time training only to find out later nobody's interested in the product. So you flip those around. You don't do all your training first. You get this promotion running. Then when people call them up, they are excited about training. Now it's like they're on the other side of the fence. Now it's not like you're trying to pull them through to get them through the training. Now they are hitting you up. I need to get trained. How do I do this? What do I do? What do I do? It just sort of flips around, makes your process a lot easier. And then after that, so far as the workflow that you take, once the partners have done those first 3 things, they've usually gotten their first sale, or they've at least got enough hot leads or interest showing in. Now they're all in. Because I talk about this in the training. When you recruit them, they come on board 2 phases. The first phase, they sign the agreement. They just come on board. When they put the product on the outside of their website, it's like they've come out. Okay, they are now actively willing to admit, because sometimes they might be replacing an existing product and they don't want to get a new product, pick it up and find out it's not as good as their old one. So they want to sort of do that secondhand. So that's why when you get that product on their website, you move past that stage a lot faster. So again, this is how I get these people so that my ratios are so much higher than the industry ratio. It's totally flipped. It's by doing these things. What's unique about the training is that this is stuff that I've done for 700 companies for so many times. I've already identified the patterns and sort of what works, what doesn't work. So I'm not stuck with a company that's got full of bad practices. You're just doing it because John said to do it, not because it's actually working. So, and then once you've done the first 3, every quarter you have another marketing meeting, another 20-minute meeting, coming up with the next 3 things you're going to do. And if you can get your partners doing one thing per month about your product, they might have 20 different products. You're doing great. I mean, this is shared Salesforce. So you're lucky if you can get those guys to, spend that much time on your product. So that's a system and a process that we take. And again, that's how we flip the entire ratios. So I can go out there with a company that's got 100 partners and blow out somebody who's got 500 partners because my ratio is going to be higher. And then the things they do are going to be more effective. And then once they register their deals, so there's the 2 roles. There's the channel marketing, and that's sort of set up the program and all the marketing stuff and everything else. And then there's the channel sales. Channel sales usually kicks in the moment that they register a deal. Then sales knows about it and they help them with their demos. They help them with the model calls, sort of examples of how this would look like if you do a demo. They overcome objections. Then they do coaching calls where they say, well, let me listen in on one of your demos or the approach that you're taking. So then you can get very hands-on that way, but everything is very systematic. It's engineered. It's not just marketing through a bunch of stuff out there.
So Ted, talk to me a little bit about, you just went through how to engage with a partner that has come in, make sure there's a cadence. make sure we're following up, make sure they're seeing the love, make sure they're seeing the money without putting a lot of investment up front, and then gradually build a relationship. I want to dial that back a little bit. Let's say I got a positioning right, working with you, I kind of figure out the margin. Now I want to target, I really want to do outbound, because all the tools that are available, whether it's LinkedIn or social or search or even AI SDR, if I'm dialing into company to recruit, how do I figure out my ideal partner profile? Who is my ideal partner that I should be targeting?
Well, there's a couple ways to do it. If you've got an exhaustive channel, like VMware, 400,000 partners or whatever they're up to, 70,000. Microsoft, I think, has 400,000. When you're dealing with that, you'd use big data to be able to pull that stuff together. There's a company out there called Partner Optimizer that I highly recommend, their product, and that will help you to create the exact profile. You just put in there your top 10% of your partners, for example, say, give me a profile of what those people look like, and it will spit it out the other end and just go get more people like that. But otherwise, most of the companies I work with don't have big channels. Again, I work with the big ones, but I like to work with a lot of the smaller ones that, have no partners or 100. How do you do that? I just go after competitors. And with the competitors, if they've got the gold levels, platinum, gold, or silver, fine. Then I will go after their gold and platinums. Those are the ones who have got quotas. Those is who are the competitors' best partners. So whenever I go out and then once those partners come on board, the partner profile that I have, the application that I have, takes about 7 minutes to complete. Again, it's not a lead form, but it gives you a lot of information about them. And so when you look at that, you end up getting a profile of your competitors' partners that, let's say, platinum. So that tells you who to go after. But I'm a little bit more aggressive than that. I have teams of people in India and other places that scour through their sites, even if they don't have a directory. We have other ways that we can find those. We pull them all in, and I do a Counter-Strike campaign. I go after my competitors. One of my companies I worked with, they had the other product was a superior product by one feature. So once they announced they have that new feature, they had 2,000 partners. Well, by the time that company woke up, we'd recruited over 1,700 of them. They had a bad partner program. The partners hated them. They had competition. Their margins weren't very good. Their pricing was bad to the partners. So we went after them with a better partner program, and we just cleaned their clock. So so far as the profile, I don't care what the profile is. If they're selling your competitors' products and they're their best partners, put them into your database. And if you ask the right questions, you'll know what that profile is, and then just go after the others. I mean, that's the model that I use. And then I don't have to do anything too crazy.
That's fantastic. So, Ted, we're kind of coming to our end today. I'd love to have you back, but I do have a question. As you work with all these companies, I know we're recording this end of 2024. 2025 is about to begin. We'll drop this podcast beginning of the year. So, if you look at 2025, what are the trends you're seeing in the channel that gets you excited about?
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people are talking about AI. I just look at AI as a market segment to go after. So for me, it's sort of exciting for that. But so far as in the channel itself, the only thing that I'm using AI with right now is helping to write copy. And even then, I just use it sort of to brainstorm for the concepts. And then from there, then I still write it up because I still want to reconstruct it persuasively. I haven't gotten the AI engines to write into the persuasive format yet.
Awesome. So with that, Ted, thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'd love to have you back. There's so much to learn. And I hope our audience goes to chanimal.com and Chanimal University. I look forward to working with you in 2025. Thank you.
You bet. Gosh, thank you so much for having me.